growth path, identity evolution, hero's journey, outsourcing wisdom, and external validation. So one of the things I found in coaching people towards their goals is that it's helpful to differentiate between a growth path and a depth path. And so what does that mean? Well, growth path is really noticeable from the outside. So if we look at the feminine versus the masculine, the hero versus the heroine, actually a really good way to say this is that the heroine brings balance to herself and then changes the world around her. It's more about the journey than the destination. The hero's journey is a quest for an external objective. It is about obligation and rising to the task. So we have this difference between inner and outer, internal versus external. One of the ways that I look at it is growth is other people would notice. Other people would notice in a way that you have accomplished something, and whereas other people would notice on a depth path because you've changed in your personality. And some would say this is splitting hairs, and I would agree with that. But it can be a very helpful reference, and it can help because sometimes people feel like, well, if I set this big goal, I'm going to throw myself out of balance, or I'll put too much pressure on myself. And when I hear that, I'm like, oh, you're on a depth journey. Where someone's like, I have ambition, I want to achieve. It's like, okay, you're on a growth path. And that can be helpful, and the dynamic balance of the two is ultimately what leads to the most fulfilling life and the most balanced person. So if we just start to look at how we do it, how we're going to do it here in Club Thrive is mission. Having a longer vision of 3-year target is going to be helpful. Setting a goal, and then the 4 sets, people set, tool set, skill set, mindset, that helps you achieve that goal. And then creating smart goals. And a lot of this goes into the strategy part that I'm not outlining here in Core 5. How we also do it here in Club Thrive is through liminal thinking and dynamic club structures. So it'll happen along the way. One of the things I found in working with people with goals for well over a decade is that often we don't really know what our goals are. And the purpose of this lesson here on Growth Path is for you to start to work through some of the processes. Some of you already know exactly what it is that you want to do. And it's true to who you are. And others of you, actually, this growth path in itself will be a bit of an objective. And so if that's you, we have a ton. I'm just going to show you right now. There's a ton of these resources down here, audios and videos that will help you. And there's a number of worksheets. I'm just going to blow through them right now in our workbook. These are all of these worksheets I'm showing you here. Find your purpose questions, identity evolution, discover your next adventure, yearnings and regrets, what isn't winning next for you, depicting your status quo. Like, these are questions. What is your next purpose or project? These are all to help you process and start to think about exactly what is next for you on the growth path. All right, so a few other differentiations as we look into feminine power versus masculine power. Growth path is going to be masculine power. It's going to be hero. It's going to be horizontal or linear time versus changing states of consciousness and vertical time. That's in the feminine. And it's going to be order-driven, achievement-driven. In growth path, we're looking at achievement. You know, like, I hit the next pay grade. I started the new company. I did the thing. And that's important for us to differentiate, because then you'll get a little bit more clear as we go into depth path, like what's some of the inner journey and inner work, and this allows us to separate it. Okay, so the growth path is a positive stressor, period. And this is really critical. I like how Jordan Peterson in 12 Rules of Life, he says, he has 2 rules. So 2 out of 12 are related to growth path. So rule number 2, treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. So that's what we're doing in identifying exactly, like, how are you going to help yourself figure out what your goals are. Then rule number 7, he says, pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. Again, like Robert Brault says, we are kept from our goals not by obstacles, but by a clear path to a lesser goal. I know you've heard me say this 10 times. Iteration is one of my methodologies. This is really important. So we want to set the right goal, and we want it to be meaningful. And meaningful it's a big deal. It means that you've got to up-level your purpose. And this is a huge part of understanding spiral dynamics and understanding positive stressors. So what we know about human beings is we're oriented towards positive stress. This is what enables us to have hormonal balance in the form of dopamine, right? We're oriented towards doing the harder thing. And when we don't do that, that's when we actually experience rapid aging. That's when we experience negative stressors that lead to chronic disease. So it's really important that you orient yourself to a bigger goal, one that you don't actually think you can achieve. This is part of the growth path perspective. And then you discipline yourself to the target by taking aligned action. This is what leads actually to a breakdown. And the breakdown then demand you generate next level competencies. I realize it's misspelled in this slide. This is what propels you into growth, and it's growth that gives you a life that's worth meaning. So this idea of dream it, believe it, achieve it, this is the growth path. And we want it to be bigger than our past. And that's really what the growth path is all about. So in the hero's journey, there's a call to adventure. And I just want to show you over in our worksheets here. There's a worksheet that is on the call to adventure. Discover your next adventure. So it's important for some of you to do some of these exercises. Those of you who know what your adventure is, you know what the next call to action is for you, that's going to be really easy. And for those of you who are like, I kind of have some amorphous idea, then you're going to need to schedule some more time around that. Either way, I do really encourage everyone to book a few hours at least to go into some of these worksheets and some of these questions, because what you will get is more clarity before you begin. And the more clarity you have, the more core 5 around strategy is going to really, you'll just be set up for that. So I'm introducing the ideas here. We're going to go deeper into it in core 5. So again, the growth path, it's a positive stressor. Eustress makes growth possible. This is why we actually need the habits. So now the habits, circadian rhythm habits, and in core 4, primal habits, this is where these pay off big time, because it's the habits themselves that restore your subtle technology. They dump inflammation. As you dump inflammatory habits, you have more energy. You also have started to automate the habits of success, which means you can do the harder things, which means what? It means you'll have a more fulfilling life. So yay, you stress. All right, so the hero's journey, the stages of the hero's journey, let's take a look at those in more depth. So there's a call to adventure, and then usually you need help. Think like Luke Skywalker and Yoda, right? There's the call to adventure, and then something else comes in, and this is the supernatural aid. And then there's a threshold, and there's a guardian to a threshold. Usually it's a bad guy, and you have to rise to the challenge to go over the threshold into the adventure, and that's the beginning of the transformation. At that point, you have a mentor or a helper. There's challenges and temptations. And again, the challenges and temptations, those look like the breakthrough cycles where you need new skills. You need to become more capable on a growth path. Don't take it personally, right? It's not your fault, right? You're a mere mortal, but you're becoming more than you were in the past. At that point, there's a revelation. Usually there's a death to the dysfunctional prior parts of the ego, the dysfunctional parts of the personality. There's a rebirth, there's transformation, there's atonement for all the asshole things you've done in the past, and then there's a return to your community, there's a return to your old life, but as you return, you're more than you were in the past. So in spiral dynamics, we'd say like you jump a level, right? You went up a level. You rose to the occasion and you got there. Then you actually know how to get from A to B. You know how to take aligned action. You know how to focus. You know how to gain next level competencies to have breakthroughs. And this is crucial. Like this is really crucial to understand that like this is the way it works. I like Benjamin Hardy's work. And Willpower Doesn't Work. He says your behavior doesn't come from your personality. Rather, your personality is shaped by your behavior. Hence, you can quickly alter your identity by altering your behavior. This is the name of the game in both the growth path and in the depth path. All right, so some of the questions to ask is, who would I have to become to do that? Right? So you think of your goal and you're like, who would I have to become? And you're like, oh, wow, I will have to reshape my personality in order to rise to the occasion. One example for me is like I used to have a much harder time with team and team management, hiring, firing, making decisions, budgeting, all that in alignment with the larger goal. And there are just a number of what in yoga is called dikshas or initiations. And this is very much true to the hero's journey. When we look at this path, these thresholds, this is where there's initiations, meaning who you were does not survive. Who you were in the past does not survive the call to the future. Don't take it personally is the name of the game. If you do get through the diksha, you experience a level of higher order, including higher order of intelligence, including a higher order of understanding the laws of the universe. And you become much more, in a way, able to predict and calculate. And this is super, super helpful in attaining goals in the future. You're no longer like Pollyannish or naive about things. So the question, when you set a bigger goal for yourself, who would you have to become? And like, how does that make your life worth living? How is that like the most meaningful thing you could do? And what might happen along the way? I love this question. I learned some of these questions about like, how might I in design thinking. It's a really good sentence stem. Those words, how might we, or what if I were to do that? Who might I become? These are really good questions to start to allow the ideation process. Again, in the workbook, there are a ton of questions that will help you get into like, what exactly are you in Club Thrive for? Like, what are you here to learn in terms of automating better strategy to hit bigger targets, bigger life goals, and have a more meaningful life? And then what is the next chapter? What does the next chunk look like for you? So the reason we choose a 3-year target is because we want something that's like in the distance. It's far enough in the distance that it can be a big thing. So for example, when Winston and Indy and I, when we started doing this, like and again, a lot of the strategy that's in Core 5, you'll get to know along the way, but a lot of it is, it's very, very personalized to who we are as individuals. So you might be doing this for yourself, you might be doing this with a team, you might be doing this with a partner, or like me, you might do it with both a team and also do it with a family. And what can happen is if the target's too close, you get stuck in the how. How am I going to do this? How are we going to do that? And we don't want to be anywhere near the how. And so the 3-year target, it kind of gets rid of the how because it puts the what. The what is it that we are going to do? What is it that we are going to accomplish in real time? And this is what makes the goal so much more exciting, is you actually have some iterations of the process to get good at it, to become who you need to become, and to ask yourself what might happen along the way. So for example, we started a company, me and Winston and Indy, a couple of years back that really leveraged all of our unique strengths, mine and ability to make money and finance projects and work with vision and team. Winston's in terms of his ability to manage projects that are very hands-on, particularly in the building industry, and Indy with her desire to learn more about design and interior design. And so this question about what might happen along the way, the kind of company that we made was basically a company where we do remodeling and then hold on the properties for short or long-term rentals. And what might happen along the way? Well, for me, my bigger why was like, I wanted my kid to understand that like businesses come out of thin air, right? That dreams come because you receive them and you work with them and you learn processes to enable them to become real. And I wanted her to see some of the ups and downs and to have a part in it, to have part of an ownership in it, so that before she was, leaving home, that she would essentially know how to run a company, know how to take an idea and create a company that could pay her way, that could grow into something bigger, that could open up relationships that otherwise she wouldn't have tapped into, and that she would be an asset or valuable to her community because of the kind of business that she could create. Now, whether or not this kid wants to be an entrepreneur or have a normal job, either way, I knew that this skill set would help her for her entire life. So for me, the reason for the company wasn't like money or finance or that. It was like, oh, I want her to be able to learn. Now for Winston, he was tired of his current company in the sense that he wanted to keep it. He wasn't ready to sell it, but there was something else. And who he wanted to become, well, he wanted to become someone that could do more investment-oriented projects. So what might happen along the way? I knew that for him, he would step into greater skill sets, including leadership, including finance, including cash flow, all the things, people management. And so part of the hero's journey is understanding that some of these core competencies that you don't currently have, right, that this is what will propel your growth and inversely will propel also your depth. And to me, that's what really makes it so exciting. It's not really that much about getting wrapped up in the final destination, although that is a very important part of the growth path, is that you choose the destination and you get good at being able to predict the destination you want to arrive at and being able to get there. But a deeper question is like, okay, and am I game for who I might become? All right, then let's see, growth, depth, identity evolutions, evolutionary spiral, and spiral dynamics. So let's look at an identity evolution. This is one of the worksheets that I want to make sure you do. It's one of our core teachings here. I got it out of Jane McGonigal's book, Super Better, and she had a PhD in like gaming psychology, particularly to video games, and she had a really bad head injury and had concussions, and she gamified getting healthy, basically recovering her brain's ability. She was having like blackouts, major concussions. It was just horrible. Had to be in the dark all the time, and she gamified it. And she basically was like, oh, you just decide who you're going to become. That's achievable. You give yourself a worthy name of the identity, and then you decide what your power-ups and your bad guys are. So those of you old enough to remember the game Pac-Man. Pac-Man was a video game, and the Pac-Man would eat these little pellets, and then and then there were these little, I don't even know what they were, but there were these things that you ate. Then if you ate them, you would get a power-up, which means you could eat the bad guys, and the bad guys were these ghosts that could eat the Pac-Man. Right? So if you can identify, like, what are the positive stressors, aka power-ups, that your future identity already has now, then what happens is the bad guys, if you know clearly what they are, the bad guys in terms of what? In terms of your superhero. What is the kryptonite to this identity evolution, to who you're trying to become next? If you can get what that is, if you're like, and I know, like, for example, for me right now, some of the bad guys for me are just simply actually eating after 5 p.m. I know that sounds like, really? But it's true. I'm just in a phase with my own health evolution that it's really important for me to be done eating by a certain time so that I sleep really well, so that I meditate in the morning. And so for me, just like eating after 5 p.m., totally fine for some people. For me, right now, bad guy. For some people, like what I found in guiding people to goals over time is that for many people, they realize like at a certain time, like they can't eat sugar. They can't have alcohol. They can't do weed. Like things that like are totally okay for certain periods of their life are not okay for this next evolution. For this next evolution that there has to be a bit of refinement. We find this all the time with intermittent fasting. It's such a great tool. So with your superhero, like a power-up for me is eating between noon and 5 p.m. and having basically a 17-hour fast time and a 5-hour feeding window in which I usually eat 2 meals. That for me right now on this particular evolution that I'm in is a total power-up. I can crush it when I do that. Other times too, some people will identify power-ups and bad guys in terms of certain people. So for example, I have a really great coach. She for me is a power-up. Whenever I talk to her, I'm like, I can do it. I can conquer the world. Whereas other people in my life, and sometimes it's sad, sometimes it's extended family members, friends of the past, etc., might show up on my bad guy list that just for this identity evolution, they're not actually helpful to take input from. It doesn't mean I'm cutting them out of my life or anything like that. It just means that I have identified that input from them is not helpful in reaching my goal on my growth path. So this is a worksheet that, again, you might do this with us in this year. You might do this 5 times in a year where you're identifying. And I always use this when my shit hits the fan. So if something goes wrong, something goes bad, I'll use this, or something happens with my kid or whatnot. It's like identity evolution, superhero. What's the name? What are the power-ups? What are the bad guys? Simple as that. And then what do I do with it? Well, first of all, I write it out in hand, and then I pin it in the kitchen. What we do now, actually, we have a big glass wall in our kitchen. We just write it directly on the board. These are the power-ups. These are the bad guys for this particular household member. Super, super helpful. All right, so that's a little bit about identity evolution in the exercise, and that's what we just did right there. Okay, higher order capacities. So there's certain capacities that you will develop, and this is really important as you go through some of the exercises in the workbook around the trajectory of certain habits that are working, not working, what's winning next in your body, what are some strengths to leverage. We'll actually get to that in a minute, and finding your purpose. What you might find is that there's certain capacities that you have that are currently undeveloped. And this is going to be really important for you to start to recognize. Is like, what are they? Is it cognitive? Is it relational? Is it somatic? So somatic is body intelligent. Is it pattern recognition, or the ability to recognize patterns? Is it athletic? Is it artistic? So as you are starting to get more in touch with your bigger goal, your 3-year plan, it's important for you to look at, like, what are some capacities that I actually really want to develop in myself in this next go around, in this next phase of evolution. And again, what we find happens in terms of, if I just go back to spiral dynamics, it's really important to know that most people don't keep developing. Statistically, most people don't keep developing. This is a song, Lateralis by Tool. I'm reaching up and reaching out. I'm reaching for the random, or whatever will bewilder me, be wilder. Whatever will bewilder me. In following our will and wind, we may just go where no one's been. We'll ride the spiral to the end and may just go where no one's been. Spiral out, keep going. So most people don't do this. They've measured levels of development over time across actually the whole planet and different cultures, and looking at what happens. And most people just raise 2 levels above where their parents were. And then they max out. They plateau and they stop. And that is absolutely the opposite of what we're doing in terms of growth path, right? In terms of growth path, we don't stop. So some of you may have really left behind, like I've had it pointed out to me, that I've hyper-developed cognitive and underdeveloped relational. From all my years in yoga practice, I have a pretty well-developed somatic body, athletic, but I'm underdeveloped in artistic, and I'm medium developed in pattern recognition. So, again, back to personality isn't permanent. We get to choose who we become. We get to mold and model ourselves. And at the same time, what I want to point out, and this is down here, in terms of identity evolution and achievement, is that we also want to know exactly what are our strengths to leverage, and we'll do that primarily through personality testing. So, if you haven't already done a number of personality tests, this is the disc, and I have, again, in our one pager here, I have a number of links to free personality tests, including the disc, including Enneagram, including Myers-Briggs, including 16 personalities, including the High Five test, which is the free version of the Gallup Strengths Finder. I'm a huge fan of the Gallup Strengths Finder. And also the paid test in Wealth Dynamics. So the disc, what you might find when you take some of these tests is that they reveal a pattern. And again, pattern recognition is a great strength to develop. Anyone that's high in IQ usually have pretty high pattern recognition. Those of us who might need to develop pattern recognition, one great way to start to do that is take a bunch of these personality tests and then just see the pattern of, like, who are you? And what are some of the strengths that you want to leverage on your next growth path, on your 3-year target. And this will all get us ready for working on strategy and how to actually hit this target in Core 5. So the disc, it helps you identify. D is for dominant. So if you're direct, decisive, if you're a doer, on the positive side, on the negative side, if you're domineering and demanding, I've been called those things before. right? You can know that you're high D. Influential, if you're inspirational, interactive, and interesting, you're high I. If you can influence someone to do something. If you're impulsive or irritating, those are signs on the I, gone negative. And these, on the negative, you can turn into the positive. It just means there's some shadow work there. We'll get into that shadow work in the depth path. C, sometimes it's called compliant or careful or conscientious. Here it's called compliant. And on the negative side, calculating or condescending. High in S is you're steady, you're supportive, you're sincere, you're stable. And on the negative side, you might be slow or sensitive, meaning like you might really withhold. Just like people are usually high in S and C or D and I. Some people are high in all four. I've seen this in I've had everyone in Wellness Pro Academy, which is another business that I run, another club. We find that people are really all over the place. It's really helpful to know where you are, meaning by all over the place, meaning like some people are dominant in two of these. They might be steady and compliant, whereas some people actually are dominant in 3 or 4, and some people are dominant in 1. You can tell from my personality, I'm high D, I'm high I. You can probably also tell I'm low S and low C in the disc. So these are some things that you can also start to notice patterns in other people. All right, this is from Gallup StrengthsFinder. Again, you have like a free version of this in those links. So these are based on leadership strengths, and they break it into 4 categories: executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. Again, taking some of these quizzes is going to help you know what are your strengths to leverage in terms of your growth path, and also like what should you even set as a target based on some of your inherent strengths. The Enneagram is, this actually comes from, I think it's based on the I Ching, or it's definitely based in Chinese philosophy, but I think the part of Chinese philosophy is the I Ching. This can also be super helpful. So in Enneagram, I'm a boss. I'm a boss leader, right? Which makes sense, being dominant over here. In domains of leadership strengths and executing, I'm an achiever, I'm an activator, I'm high in command. So I'm high in E and I over here in Gallup strengths, which really correlates with high D, high I, and DISC. So again, this is part of starting to recognize the pattern. Now, why is it important to be able to know exactly who you are? Well, you can leverage. Those are strengths you have to leverage, but also there's strengths to communicate. So just in the way that I'm communicating to you, like this is how I am, this is what you can expect from me. Like I can help you achieve things. I can activate or stimulate or influence you in a positive way to do the hard thing, right? Because I know I'm high in influencing. In terms of relationship building, this also means that I need to surround myself with people that are high in relationship. For example, my husband's really high in relationship ability. My team members, people I hire to work with me, are high in relationship building. I hire people that are strong in relationship building intentionally to make up for my own deficiencies, and so I can learn from them. All right, strategic thinking. These are how you know that you're with someone that's like a learner, or someone who has intellection and reflection, someone who's naturally strategic, who can ideate, who's future-oriented, who probes for context or can analyze things. Those are all skills that are in the strategic thinking category. So take a bunch of these quizzes. I really can't, if you haven't done these, like it's going to take some time, you guys. But you want to do this, and then you want to, again, in Club Thrive, you have a Google Drive with a folder that's just for Club Thrive, with a series of folders in there. Have one for personality tests. Upload your results into there. Because more or less, these parts of your personality don't really change that much. You can consciously develop other parts of your personality, like Ben Hardy's saying, and personality isn't permanent. But you want to keep leveraging your inherent strengths. All right, I think we've covered most of all this. Learner mindset versus fixed mindset. Learner mindset, this is where you decide to grow. Fixed mindset, this is where you're like, I'm perfectly great the way I am. I don't need any big goals. And that's what will lead to a less fulfilling life. Okay, emerge with deeper materialism. This is a cool lesson. I'll actually move this down here to resources. So deeper materialism, And the reason I put this in the growth path, there's a lot of, I would say, like, we live in a culture that's so hyper materialistic that stuff is cheap. And because stuff is cheap, what you want to identify is like, what is really the stuff you need to grow into who you want to become? Because you'll find you can't do it without stuff. Like for me, it's technology, right? I want really good computer. I want good backup hard drives. I want fancy headsets. I want a good microphone. I want my special thermos. I want the iPad and pencil. I know, right? I can draw. I have a phone that's like the size of a mini computer, and it's like stacked, right? It's got a ton of hard drive on it. So for me, my deeper materialism is largely in technology. It also, because I'm athletic and I'm outdoorsy, I have a lot of technology in the athletic realm. So part of deeper materialism, and I'm going to include this lesson in here in Growth Path, part of deeper materialism is really recognizing the stuff in the material world. Again, the masculine path, the hero's journey, where we outsource our wisdom and we have external validation. We also identify exactly what is the stuff. What is the stuff we're going to need in order to hit the goal? And this can often, in a way, like be a pivot for certain people that have a negative association with materialism. You want to fully own your stuff, and that's really the concept of deeper materialism, is you don't need a lot, but what you need is highly specific to your growth path. So I just want you to keep that in mind, because what you might find is that certain things you haven't allowed yourself to invest in, or allowed yourself to want, or allowed yourself to have, might be a huge part of that 3-year target. If it's like, no, you actually want those things, and for a good reason. An example, again, from me and my family is like, we own a lot of real estate. And this is our form of deeper materialism. We will only buy real estate that we can improve. We will only buy real estate that we can integrate more into the community and to create more highly functional communities. So it's very much tied into our values. But again, it's very materialistic, right? If you look at it on paper, it's like very material, and the way we interact in the world around that company is very material. It's very much the tools that we need, the stuff that we need in order to improve the properties. All right. So one thing, too, about the hero's journey is that it moves in linear time. It's measurable progress, and there's external outcomes. It's achievement-oriented. Now, what does this mean? Well, we actually set targets, and we move in a linear fashion towards those targets, or we set a target, and we reverse engineer back from the target. When we get into the heroine's journey, we basically enter different orders of space-time. So it's very mystical and magical. The masculine is linear. It's linear, and it's progressive, and it's also exponential. So as we get into strategy, you'll find that when we talk about exponential growth, that's going to also be in the form of like a masculine strategy to get to the point where certain things start to go into exponential returns. All right, so what's your work? You really have got to decide who you want to become next and what that person can do, and how to go about doing it. Just to start to think about it, because what should happen is as you start to think about it, it's going to bring up a lot of critical issues, and that is exactly what we want to have start happening from Growth Path. In terms of this lesson and in terms of all these resources, it's going to be a process over the course of your year with me in Club Thrive to work your way through. There's no emergency to do these things. It's more of like print your workbook, start to fill out these worksheets, start to really think of like, what is my bigger goal that I'm in here for, that I'm in Club Thrive for? What is the kind of achievement or fulfillment that I want? And again, from the 4 aims of yoga, we have artha, which is like enough stuff. We have kama, which is pleasure. We have dharma, which is your purpose. And we have moksha, which is enlightenment. So if those of you who are here more for healing, achievement on healing or hero journey is also important to identify. So for some of you, like your 3-year target is really to deeply heal yourself. In which case, a lot of, like some of this stuff in hero's journey, like you're not going to want to set this like big, hairy, audacious external goal for yourself. You're going to focus way more on the depth journey, way more on integration, way more on healing, way more on the cores of core 1, core 3, core 4. And after you are healed, and what we find is like people stick around my clubs for years and years, is once you're healed, then you'll be ready for growth path. So don't take it on unless you're like, I have a surplus of energy. And that's an important part of growth path. Yes, you can do the vision work, but what you don't want to do is like guilt yourself for not taking action, because if your calling right now is on healing, then it's depth path oriented. And the last thing I'll say on this is it's important to realize that there's these different stages of life. This is something that's been really helpful that I learned more in the yoga tradition. So there's a saying that, for the first 5 years of a kid's life, you treat them like a king, and for the next 5 years, you treat them like a slave, and then you treat them like a friend. So I threw that in because it's helpful to know. All right. But also looking in terms of like, what stage of life are you in? Are you in a householder stage of life? Are you in a crone or a wise elder stage of life? Are you in a becoming or teenager stage of life? Are you in a like discover the world because you didn't do that earlier stage of life, or because that's the time of your life now? And to allow yourself to reflect that there's these natural stages of life. And if you're unhappy in your life, which you'll discover in, in these status, actually, this is great, depict your status quo. These particular worksheets, what isn't winning next. These will help you see like what is outdated, like where are your pain points? And these pain points in here will help you get a real clear sense of maybe it's time for a big shift in terms of stage of life. All right, so that's growth path. It's really to start to get the wheels spinning, the mind rolling, and for you to step into who you want to become next. And again, you will shape your next personality by your behavior, by the positive stressor habits. And I just want to end with the hero returns from the forest with a gift of wisdom to share. And to me, this has always been like the best part about taking on more, about stepping into a bigger identity than I have in the past, to the path of achievement, is when you do those hard things, when you do those positive stressors, when you engage stress, when you do the hard things, you become someone you weren't before, and you're so much more useful, you're so much more helpful to other people in your life.